What is the most inoffensive thing you've seen someone get offended by? I still remember in kindergarten when my friend and I were reading all the colors out loud on one of those Crayola A super packs. I got straight up yelled at and sent to the principal's office for saying orange pizzazz because the teacher said I called someone a pizza. I would not listen despite having the crayon as evidence. After a 30-minute scolding and waiting for my mom to leave work to pick me up for my suspension, she came in all apologetic. When I explained to her the whole situation, not the school side, Ma went crazy. I'd heard her say one word once, that's the only swear I ever heard from her, and we had just been rear-ended in traffic. She just went off while I'm sitting there with my jaw dropped and the principal is just red as hell. I got unsuspended on the spot, but she pulled me out of school for the day anyway. We had a lovely day. She explained very well how I shouldn't swear like that unless absolutely necessary, and I've exhausted all civility. When being civil simply isn't working, sometimes you might have to call someone that. The next day at school, I learned that I now had the stigma of being the kid who got the Crayola super pack taken away. That is so unfair and ridiculous to punish such a young child so harshly, even if you had actually said that. Kids say weird stuff. Have to take away the whole pack of crayons? Jeez, just take out the orange pizzazz. Story 2. We were choosing a mascot for summer camp where I worked. It was the first day of camp, and we'd always let the campers vote on a mascot that we'd use for the rest of the summer as sort of a bonding thing. This year, the kids voted for wolves as the mascot. It was almost unanimous. But one kid, probably about 9 or 10, threw a fit because wolves are quote unquote bad guys, and he doesn't want to be a wolf. He wants to be a hero. He refused to participate in any team activities because he didn't want to be on a team with the bad guys. At one point, we brought in a guy in a full mascot wolf costume for some anti bullying program, and the kid had a massive tantrum. I almost felt like we were going to learn at some point that his brother was ended by wolves or some tragic origin story. I did feel bad for the boy because I was fairly certain he had some kind of unaddressed emotional difficulties or something. But we weren't going to change the mascot name that almost everyone else voted for. The really sad thing is that wolf populations have suffered a lot due to stereotypes that they're bad. Story 3. Maybe 22 years ago, I had a phone interview with a baking company. I didn't care to have my peers know what I was up to, so I took the call on my cell phone in my car. The call was crystal clear and had no technical issues. At one point, they had mentioned the weather and asked how it was, where I was. I told him that I was sitting in my car and I could see that it was actively snowing and whatnot. The interviewer asked me, "Are you taking this call on a cell phone?" I told him I was. Then he asked me if I thought that was appropriate. I asked him what he meant by that. He said he thought it was kind of rude to take a formal call on a cell phone. I told him I would be more than happy to conclude the interview if talking on a cell phone was an issue. If he was interested, I'd be happy to continue it the next day when I'd be at a desk. He again repeated how rude he thought it was that I had called him from a cell phone and that there was no need to continue the interview process. I disagreed with the first point, but did agree with the second. To this day, I wonder what the hell he was talking about and where he was coming from. Story 4. At my job, we often move around from desk to desk. One guy left his desk with a small fan, and my neighbor would point the fan at his desk. A new person came and sat at the desk with the fan and rearranged everything to her liking. After she went home the first day, my neighbor pointed the fan back at his desk. When she came in the following day, she saw the fan was pointed away from her chair. She loudly asked the room if someone had been interfering with her workspace. My neighbor apologized and took responsibility for it, but reminded her that it was not her fan, it belonged to the former desk occupant. She went ballistic. My neighbor was disrespecting her and her space and creating a hostile environment, and she went to the floor supervisor and demanded a new seating assignment. When she packed up her desk, she took the fan. She eventually got a seat alone in a quiet private space, so that worked out nicely for her. She had gone into almost the same exact fight in her last seating area and had been moved into our area to soothe her. Oh my god, does she really just keep taking stuff wherever she moves to a new place and asking them to be moved anyway in the first place? I hope so, because that's hilarious. I mean, awful. Story 5. My name and contact details went on the cover letter for a newsletter that had 19,000 tenants. A sight impaired lady who I'd met a few weeks before complained that the copy she was sent did not take her visual impairment into consideration and that I was breaking the law. She had some special requirements, specific font and size, no italics, etc. I offered her the choice of we sent her the newsletter as it is, pics and all, but blown up to A3 size to make it easier, or I could copy the text into her specific requirements but without the pictures. I could not do both. I specifically told her if she chose option A, I could not guarantee that the text would meet her needs. She chose the first option, so I managed to get our print guys to do one copy at A3 size. I delivered it by hand the same day she'd asked for the copy. The very next day, at 9:02 a.m., she made an official complaint against me because the text in the version I'd posted did not meet her needs and she was unable to read it. Story 6. I used to work at a bookstore. One of my coworkers was helping a customer who wanted a book from the top shelf of a stupidly high section. Coworker is 4 foot 11 inches. Customer is maybe 5'2". The nearest step stool is God knows where. I'm 5 foot 10 inches and was nearby, so coworker waved me over and pointed out the book. I plucked it off the shelf and handed it to the customer with a polite, casual, "Here you are, ma'am," type of smile. No big deal, right? Customer exploded. A total Karen, though we didn't call them that back then. Apparently, it was simply completely unfair that I was so tall and could reach the book easily, and clearly I was mocking her and blah, 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 blah. She went to my manager to complain. I didn't hear that conversation, but she left quickly. Bonus, the book was about weddings. She told my coworker her daughter was getting married. I pity her soon-to-be in-laws. Story 7. I was once at a Chinese restaurant having dinner when I noticed there was a white couple seated not too far from me. As they were looking through the menu deciding what to order, the guy leaned over and grabbed the attention of a guy one table over, he was Chinese, and asked him if he could recommend something good to eat. The Chinese guy flipped out and started to yell at the white guy. The Chinese guy called him racist and went on about how the white guy should just figure it out on his own, just like how the Chinese guy was forced to do his entire life in America. The white guy apologized, said he didn't know he was being offensive, and went back to look at his menu. I walked over to the white guy and offered my help. I have no idea why the Chinese guy flipped out so much. Obviously, there were major underlying issues there, but I thought it was a genuine request for help, and so I don't get it. Story 8. I want to start this off by saying that when this story happened, I was going blind, so I had some vision but required the use of a wiped tit cane. So I am on campus one day. I'm leaving a building when I spot a man in a wheelchair coming up behind me. He had a squeaky wheel, so I noticed the noise and looked back. This man had a backpack and some stuff in his lap, so when I went through the door, I held it open for him. Being a nice guy and helping out a random person, that is where I screwed up. This man in a wheelchair stopped. He looked at me and started yelling that he didn't need help from me. He didn't need my pity, and I'm only holding the door because he's disabled. I waggled my cane at him and said, "I'm disabled as well. I was only trying to be nice and open the door for you like I would for anybody. I was not opening the door for you because you were disabled. I'm not going to slam the door in your face because you are disabled. I'm going to do it because you are a jerk." Then I slammed the door in his face and tapped myself away. I never thought someone would get so upset by me opening the door for them. So this is kind of like when some supposedly would get mad at someone holding the door for them, as if we don't do that for anyone ever. If you found this story messed up, please take your anger out on that like button and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out, and you'll make one dude a pretty happy guy. Let's go ahead and get back to the stories. Story 9. So here's mine. I went to Walmart the other day, and of course they have to clean the buggies off before you can get one. Me, this 6'5" man, and a few others arrived when there was none, and we had to wait for some. So someone comes out, and the 6'5" tall man pushes past me and the woman to get a buggy, although he came in after us. He gets stopped by a short male worker who politely asked him to hold on just a second so he can have a sanitized buggy. The man just flat out starts cussing him out, getting in his face and everything. He snatches the buggy, pushes past us, and starts screaming, "You don't know who the hell you're talking to, little man," down the aisles. The worker handled it very well, but he was scared as hell just as much as we were. Never knew a couple extra seconds for your own benefit could piss someone off so much. Another story I have is an encounter while waiting for the train. Me, "Hey, I love your hair, so cool." A girl walked by with bright purple hair, which looked amazing on her, so I told her and she ranted at me about how I shouldn't talk to girls and women in quote unquote this way, that it was offensive to say such a thing for God knows why, that I almost exploited her. I did not make any weird movements or say anything else, just told her I loved her hair and that's it. The quote above is literally the only thing I said. Awkward train ride that was, since there weren't any other available spots. Story 10. Years ago, playing TF2 on a paid server, I had a spray of Doc Brown. It was the face he made after he set the trash can on fire in Back to the Future specifically. Girls started yelling, saying my spray was obscene, which is crude and against the rules, and that I should be disgusted, etc. She contacted the admins. Admins came over and started lecturing me and threatening to ban me because of the no indecent content rule. I explained it was of Doc Brown from Back to the Future, looked at the floor and posted the spray. The admins brought the girl over to have her verify it. She said it was, and that me posting images of a disgusting old man should result in a permanent ban. The admins told her it was the actor Christopher Lloyd and from a well-known movie. She grumbled some more and the admins returned her to the game. They told me that they won't do anything as I did nothing wrong. They also told me to try to avoid using the spray until she left. They doubted she would return as she wasn't a member of the server anyways. This was my first experience with cancel culture. Story 11. I'll never forget, sometime in the mid-90s, I was walking with my friends in the park talking about Street Fighter 2. We started arguing about what Chun-Li says when she does one of her moves. One of our friends says she goes, "Jie Tak." I'm old and haven't played in a while, can't quite remember the sound. At that moment, a cop was running by, pushing his baby in a stroller. He suddenly turned, letting the stroller roll away onto the grass and got in our faces. Like he was trying to fight us because he thought we were insulting him, not just in the middle of a conversation. Now, I was probably 14, but the kid whose face he was mainly getting in was 11 and like 4 foot tall. This guy definitely was in his 30s. He was like, "You won't back up your words?" And we were like, "The words from Street Fighter 2, which we don't even know why you are reacting to, and we aren't even sure what the words are?" By the way, we knew he was a cop from the shirt he was wearing, and because he told us, we were lucky he wasn't on duty or we might have gotten harmed. Story 12. I had a coworker who got mad at me because I asked her not to tickle me. A, that's inappropriate at work. B, we're not children. We're not in a relationship. We're not family. C, I just don't like being tickled. She flipped out and said everyone likes being tickled and I was being mean to her. Happily, my boss had my back. This happened over a decade ago. I don't work with that woman or for that company. In fact, even the company doesn't exist anymore. I am also a woman. The coworker was very young and immature. This was her first job, her first time in a professional environment, and she really had no clue about professional workplace behavior. I wasn't upset because she truly thought she was being friendly, but I still don't like being tickled. Also, some people start swinging punches when they get tickled. It's not safe to do it to anyone randomly. Story 13. I work customer service by phone and have experienced a number of times people getting super offended for little reason. I do a small variety: roadside assistance, service calls for equipment repair, product Q&A, placing orders, minor tech support, all for different brands. One roadside assistance call, this guy got a flat tire on the side of the expressway. They had a spare tire but no jack, so no biggie. I dispatched the call and told them help would be there as soon as possible. He asked for the time they'll arrive, which is a common question. Well, I can't provide an exact time, only an estimate, less than an hour, and most of the time when I tell people that I can't give an exact time frame, that fires and accidents take priority. You're in the queue. They accept that information and thank me for the help. Not this guy. He demanded an exact time as to when help would arrive. Insert story on how he's an important person with things to do, followed with, "We're not real if we don't give him an exact time of arrival to change his tire." I verbally slapped him out of his story. I can do that per my job protocols. And told him I've done this work for a decade and can't tell him anything like, "They'll be there in 4 minutes and 13 seconds," because it will be wrong. I reiterated help will be there as soon as possible, then I released a call. No sense in me entertaining this offended guy who's already got help on the way when I've got other people still waiting to call for help. Story 14. Here's a few. My 7-month-old was wearing a shirt that had a rocket ship and the NASA logo, and some middle aged woman in the shop said, "He shouldn't be wearing that because he's clearly not an astronaut." I was dumbfounded. Second, one time someone got offended when I put on my seatbelt thinking I was commenting on her ability to drive. Third, I spent 9 hours deep cleaning the house for an inspection. I went above and beyond, clearing my work schedule and going the extra mile, and my roommate double checked my work. He had a complete psychotic meltdown because I forgot to sweep underneath the couch. I moved out the next day and never spoke to him again. Fourth, I was at the vet with my cat and he sneezed. This was apparently very offensive to an older woman. She was there with a corgi, and she started screaming at me for about 30 minutes about pet hygiene. Fifth, at school, someone didn't have a calculator and asked if anyone had one they could borrow. Someone offered them a pink calculator and they refused, saying that they were offended they'd try and give them something girly. Sixth, I once listened to my boss trying to lecture the fire marshal because he was talking about something being flame retardant. Her reasoning was you should just call it fireproof because retardant was an awful word. It was one of those times where I really should have tried to stop her, but instead I just stood off to the side, probably making a surprise Pikachu face. Seventh, I got in trouble in kindergarten for saying the word dead. Apparently, it was too violent. Eighth, when I was a child, my mom paid for something with a check. The cashier remarked that my mom had nice handwriting. My mom flew off the handle and we had to storm out of the shop in outrage. To this day, I still have no idea what happened. Ninth, I worked at a restaurant and we put up some Halloween decorations. We had to take them all down when someone found the glittery skull decoration offensive. 10th, I called someone fam and she blew up at me saying that I clearly meant the N-word. And 11th, my Mexican friend, born in a small town in Mexico, wore a sombrero and poncho for Halloween. A white girl told him that's offensive to Mexicans. Story 15. This, Professor Greg Patton at the University of Southern California, USC, was telling students in a communications lecture last month about filler or pause words, such as or in English. Footage of his lecture, which has now gone viral, shows Professor Patton saying, "In China, the common pause word is that. So in China, it might be naga. Enunciated, naga sounds like the N word, which led several of the professor's students to complain to the university. Responding to the complaint, the dean of the university, Geoffrey Garrett, told students that Professor Patton would no longer be teaching the course. "It is simply unacceptable for the faculty to use words in class that can marginalize, hurt, and harm the psychological safety of our students," he said. The university says that Professor Patton volunteered to step away from his role amid the investigation into complaints made against him. "This is the stupidest thing to get offended over that I've seen in quite a while, and damaging to actual cases of terminology being used inappropriately. I read a couple of articles about this, and fortunately, he didn't lose his job. He just voluntarily stopped teaching that particular course for the term and had someone replace him. He still has other courses. However, the entire thing also sidestepped the normal procedures that are usually involved when stuff like this is brought up, so the school did the professor dirty. And as a person who speaks multiple languages, including Mandarin, where there are words that sort of sound like offensive terms in English, I can't believe this happened. It's ridiculous and shows an ironic lack of cultural awareness." Story 16. I was a hospital janitor. We have 2 different kinds of hats to wear, and one of them looks like the hat the surgeons on TV wear, and one's a shower cap. I wore the surgeon one because I'm bald and it didn't Velcro to my head. Walking through surgery after cleaning, my coworker asked why I like the hat that looks like a surgeon. I said, "Isn't it obvious? I like to pretend I'm a surgeon." This big beast of a woman rolled out on her office chair, got all uppity, and said, "If you want to be a surgeon, you can go to school for 10 years and learn to be one." She reported me. I had a disciplinary hearing with my 3 supervisors over the incident. I told the union steward. My 3 supervisors lost their job. The surgeon horribly botched the surgery and lost her job as well. I couldn't believe it. I had only made a harmless, sarcastic remark. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy what's the worst thing you've seen a professional do. Story 2 is madly unbelievable. It's insane. I'll see you in that video then. I'll be waiting for you, and thank you for watching this one.